Welcome back to XCoinUSA. Before you spend that quarter, stop and take a closer look, because some rare Washington quarters could be worth far more than 25 cents. In this video, we're uncovering the most valuable Washington quarters, rare quarter errors, silver quarters, key dates, and hidden mint mark varieties that collectors are searching for right now. From older Washington silver quarters to surprising error coins that may still be hiding in collections, coin jars, and even pocket change, one small detail could make a huge difference in value. So grab your quarters, check the date, inspect the mint mark, and watch closely, because you could be holding a rare U.S. coin worth hundreds, thousands, or potentially much more. Money. First up, listen to me carefully, because that tiny detail on a 1966 Washington quarter has confused collectors for decades. There is no mint mark. But before you assume that no mint mark automatically means rare, there is an important secret you need to know. A normal 1966 Washington quarter was intentionally produced without a mint mark. That means the absence of a D or P is not, by itself, an error. In fact, the 1965, 1966, and 1967 clad Washington quarters were struck without mint marks as part of a temporary policy during a major period of change in American coinage. So if you have a 1966 quarter with no mint mark, you have the correct normal variety. But the real question is whether your particular coin has something else that makes it valuable. The year 1966 sits right in the middle of one of the most fascinating transitions in U.S. coin history. Before 1965, Washington quarters were made from 90% silver, but rising silver prices and a national coin shortage pushed the United States Mint toward a new copper-nickel-clad composition. The 1966 quarter is therefore not a silver quarter. It weighs approximately 5.67 grams, measures 24.3 millimeters, and has a reeded edge, with copper-nickel outer layers surrounding a pure copper center. The regular 1966 issue had an enormous mintage of 821,101,500 pieces. That sounds like a coin that should be worth only 25 cents, and for most circulated examples, that's exactly the situation. But rarity in coin collecting doesn't always come from a low mintage. Sometimes it comes from extraordinary condition, unusual varieties, or a genuine mint error. Now take a close look at your coin. On the obverse, you will see George Washington, with Liberty above him, In God We Trust on either side, and the date 1966 below. If you're searching for the mint mark beneath Washington's neck and you don't see one, don't panic and don't celebrate yet. That's exactly what you should expect on a regular 1966 quarter. The important clue is what happens next. Turn the coin over and carefully inspect the reverse. Look closely at United States of America, EPLURIBUS UNUM, quarter dollar, the eagle, the rim, and the overall strike. This is where a common 1966 quarter can potentially separate itself from the ordinary coins that pass through millions of Americans' hands. And one of the biggest reasons collectors pay attention to these coins is condition. A heavily circulated 1966 quarter with scratches, worn details, and contact marks will generally have little premium over face value. But an exceptionally preserved example can be a completely different story. PCGS describes the regular 1966 quarter as common overall, while noting that MS67 examples are scarce, and MS67 plus pieces are extremely scarce. The difference between an ordinary circulated coin and a top-condition coin can therefore be enormous. This is why you should never judge a 1966 quarter only by its age. A coin that is 60 years old isn't automatically rare, but a 1966 quarter with spectacular surfaces, strong luster, sharp details, and virtually no distracting marks can become a serious collector piece. And now we reach the part that can completely change the value, errors and varieties. Imagine finding a 1966 Washington quarter that wasn't struck on the correct quarter planchet at all. That's no longer an ordinary coin. Recent auction records show authenticated examples of 1966 quarters struck on incorrect planchets. One quarter struck on a Jefferson nickel planchet, graded MS65 NGC, sold for $403 at Heritage Auctions in March 2026. Another 1966 quarter struck on a clad dime planchet, graded MS64 PCGS, sold for $900 in December 2025. Other documented examples include 1966 quarters struck on 5-cent and 1-cent planchets. These are the kinds of unusual mint errors that collectors should pay attention to because the error itself, not simply the 1966 date, creates the major premium. Another fascinating area is doubled dies. When examining the reverse, don't immediately assume every unusual-looking letter is a valuable doubled die. Mechanical doubling, die deterioration, scratches, and postment damage can create misleading appearances. A genuine double die variety needs proper attribution, and strong examples can command substantially more attention than ordinary coins. If you believe your 1966 quarter has dramatic doubling, especially in the lettering or other design elements, compare it carefully with trusted references and consider professional authentication before assuming you found a major rarity. There is also a completely different 1966 quarter you should know about: the Special Mint Set, commonly called SMS. In 1965, 1966, and 1967, the Mint produced special mint sets rather than the traditional proof sets. These coins received special preparation and generally have a noticeably different appearance from ordinary circulation strikes. NGC lists a 1966 SMS quarter with a mintage of approximately 2,261,583 pieces. So if your 1966 quarter looks unusually sharp, has exceptionally clean surfaces, and appears almost proof-like, don't automatically classify it as an ordinary circulation strike. It may deserve a closer examination as a possible SMS coin. Now let's talk about the numbers that make collectors stop scrolling. The ordinary 1966 Washington quarter may be common, but an elite condition example has achieved an astonishing auction result. PCGS records a $21,000 auction record for a 1966 Washington quarter graded MS68+, sold by Heritage Auctions on May 7, 2023. CoinWorld also reported that a PCGS MS68 plus 1966 quarter sold for $20,400 at Stack's Bowers in November 2023. These prices aren't what you should expect for an average 1966 quarter from a pocket or coin jar. They represent exceptional, professionally graded condition rarities. More recent auction data shows that even slightly lower grades can bring significant prices when the coin is exceptionally preserved. Graysheet records a 1966 MS68 NGC quarter selling for $976 at Heritage Auction in June 2026, while another MS67 PCGS example sold for $104 in October 2025. The same auction records also demonstrate the premiums that unusual planchet errors can command. This is why there isn't one simple answer to the question: how much is a 1966 no mint mark quarter worth? The answer depends on whether it is circulated or uncirculated, its exact grade, surface quality, strike, possible variety, and whether a genuine mint error is present. So when you find a 1966 Washington quarter without a mint mark, follow a simple inspection process. First, confirm the date is actually 1966. Second, remember that the missing mint mark is normal for this year. Third, check the weight and physical appearance for signs of an incorrect planchet. Fourth, examine the lettering and design under magnification for possible double die characteristics. Fifth, inspect the rims and edges for clips, major striking abnormalities, or unusual shapes. And finally, evaluate the condition. If the coin has unusually clean surfaces and exceptional eye appeal, it may be worth having professionally graded. Most importantly, never clean the coin. Don't polish it, don't scrub it, don't use chemicals, and don't try to make an old quarter look new. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and reduce its collector value. The ordinary 1966 Washington quarter may be a common coin, but the right combination of condition, variety, and genuine mint error can turn this seemingly ordinary 25-cent piece into a much more interesting collectible. The missing mint mark isn't the treasure. The real treasure is discovering what makes your 1966 Washington quarter different from the millions of others. Next up, what if I told you that a 1972 D Washington quarter sitting in an old coin jar could be worth dramatically more than its 25-cent face value? The first thing you need to understand is that the D mint mark is important because it tells you this quarter was struck at the Denver Mint. In 1972, Denver produced 311,067,732 Washington quarters, so the date and mint mark alone do not make this coin rare. But that is exactly where the mystery begins, because collectors aren't only searching for a 1972 D quarter. They are searching for the right combination of condition, strike quality, die varieties, mint errors, and exceptional preservation. The 1972 D Washington quarter belongs to the modern clad era of American coinage. Unlike the famous 90% silver Washington quarters made through 1964, this 1972 quarter contains copper and nickel over a pure copper center. It weighs approximately 5.67 grams, measures 24.3 millimeters in diameter, and has a reeded edge. The coin was designed by John Flanagan, with George Washington appearing on the obverse and the eagle appearing on the reverse. That means if someone tells you that every old Washington quarter is automatically a silver coin, don't believe it. A 1972 D quarter is a clad coin, and its potential value comes primarily from numismatic factors rather than silver content. Now look closely at the obverse. The D should appear beneath Washington's neck. This tiny letter can be easy to overlook, but it identifies Denver as the mint of origin. And here's where collectors start looking for something unusual. The 1972 D issue has documented repunched mint mark varieties. Some varieties show traces of an additional D beneath or beside the primary mint mark. For example, documented 1972 D RPM varieties include DD examples with secondary mint mark impressions in different directions. These varieties can be considerably more interesting than a normal 1972 D quarter, especially when the attribution is clear and the coin is in strong condition. But don't make the mistake of assuming every strange-looking D is valuable. A genuine repunched mint mark is a specific die variety, while scratches, contact damage, die deterioration, and postmint damage can create misleading shapes. If your 1972 D quarter appears to have an extra piece of a D, examine it under magnification and compare the exact position and shape against recognized variety references. The difference between a genuine variety and ordinary damage can mean the difference between a common quarter and a collectible variety. That tiny mint mark could be the detail that makes your coin worth investigating. Condition is another major factor. Most 1972 D quarters circulated for decades, passing through cash registers, vending machines, banks, pockets, and coin jars. Circulated examples generally have little premium, but high-grade examples are much more interesting. PCGS notes that the 1972 D quarter is available in mint state, particularly from original mint sets and bank rolls, and that the issue can have strong strikes with well-defined chest feather detail and sharp lettering. PCGS population information shows the regular 1972 D issue reaching MS68, with more than 250 examples graded MS67 as of its cited December 2025 data. And now comes the part that can make a common quarter suddenly become a serious collector coin: the auction record. According to PCGS, the auction record for a regular 1972 D Washington quarter is $3,055 for an MS68 example sold by Heritage Auctions on January 8, 2014. Think about that for a moment. The face value is only 25 cents, yet an exceptionally preserved example brought more than $3,000. This does not mean your average 1972 D quarter is worth thousands. It means that condition rarity at the highest grades can create an extraordinary premium. There are also lower-grade examples that show how dramatically value can change depending on condition. PCGS records an NGC MS 67 1972 D quarter selling for $31 at Great Collections in January 2013. The PCGS page also lists a current guide value of $60 for that MS67 example, while the MS68 guide value is listed at $1,050. These numbers demonstrate why professional grading matters when a coin appears exceptionally clean. A circulated 1972 D quarter and a nearly flawless mint state example may have the same date, same mint mark, and same basic design, but the market can treat them as completely different coins. When inspecting your own 1972 D Washington quarter, start with the surfaces. Look for original luster rather than a dull or heavily scratched appearance. Check Washington's cheek and jaw, because contact marks in these open areas can affect the grade. Then examine the lettering, date, and rim. Flip the coin over and inspect the eagle's breast and feather details. Strong definition can be an important sign of a quality strike. Also look carefully for unusual clips, off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, die breaks, missing design elements, or other genuine mint-made abnormalities. Remember, however, that an error needs to have occurred during production at the mint. Damage that happened after the coin entered circulation is not a mint error. One particularly important point is the difference between an error and a variety. A wrong planchet strike or dramatic off-center strike is an error caused during the minting process. A repunched mint mark is a die variety created through the preparation or use of the die. Both can attract collectors, but they are identified differently. For the 1972 D quarter, the documented RPM varieties make the mint mark especially worth examining. If you believe you have one, don't scrape, polish, or alter the coin in an attempt to reveal the second mint mark. Preserve the surfaces exactly as they are. So what is a 1972 D Washington quarter actually worth? For a normal circulated example, you're generally looking at around face value unless there is something special about the coin. Uncirculated examples can bring premiums, with one current guide source estimating around $7.29 or more for an uncirculated MS Plus example. But truly high-grade coins can move into much higher territory, and the auction record demonstrates that an exceptional MS68 example has reached $3,055. A recognized RPM variety, dramatic mint error, or unusually high grade can create an entirely different valuation. And there is one final rule that every collector should remember: never clean a potentially valuable coin. Do not polish your 1972 D quarter, don't use chemicals, don't scrub it with a cloth, and don't try to make the surface shine. Original surfaces are extremely important to collectors, and cleaning can permanently reduce the coin's desirability. If your 1972 D Washington quarter has an unusual mint mark, an impressive error, exceptional condition, or a suspiciously perfect appearance, the smartest move is to preserve it and consider professional authentication and grading. The D itself may be common, but the right 1972 D quarter can tell a much more valuable story. Next up, imagine finding a 1982 Washington quarter with a small P mint mark in your pocket change, and discovering that this ordinary-looking 25-cent coin has an auction record of $10,200. That sounds unbelievable, but the story becomes much more interesting when you understand what makes the 1982 P Washington quarter special. The Philadelphia Mint produced 500,931,000 quarters in 1982, so the date and P mint mark alone do not make this coin rare. The real opportunity is hidden in the coin's condition, strike quality, varieties, and especially unusual mint errors. PCGS identifies the 1982 P as a copper-nickel-clad quarter weighing 5.67 grams and measuring 24.3 millimeters, with the famous Washington design created by John Flanagan. The history of the 1982 P quarter is especially fascinating because 1982 and 1983 were unusual years for collectors. The U.S. Mint did not produce traditional mint sets for those 2 years. According to PCGS, that makes high-grade 1982P and 1982D circulation strikes much harder to locate than you might expect from their huge production numbers. In other words, more than 500 million 1982P quarters were made, but finding one that survived circulation with exceptionally clean surfaces is a completely different challenge. That's why collectors pay close attention to brilliant, nearly untouched examples. A normal circulated 1982 P quarter may be worth only its face value, while a superb mint state specimen can command hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Now turn the coin over and examine the obverse carefully. The small P mint mark appears beneath George Washington's neck, identifying Philadelphia as the mint. This is important because Philadelphia had only recently begun placing the P mint mark on circulating Washington quarters. 1980 was the first year for that change. The 1982 P therefore belongs to the early period of Philadelphia-marked clad quarters. The coin itself contains outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a pure copper center, rather than the 90% silver composition associated with Washington quarters, dated 1964 and earlier. That means a 1982 P quarter is valuable primarily for its numismatic characteristics, not for silver content. And this is where you need to slow down, because not every valuable 1982 P quarter looks obviously rare. Start with the condition. Examine Washington's cheek and jaw, the fields around the portrait, the date, Liberty, and In God We Trust. On the reverse, inspect the eagle, lettering, and open fields for scratches and contact marks. A coin that appears brilliant to the naked eye can still have enough small marks to keep it out of the highest grades. But if you find a 1982 P quarter with outstanding luster, strong details, and almost no distracting marks, you may have something worth separating from ordinary change. PCGS specifically notes that MS64 examples can command a premium. MS65 examples are tough, MS66 examples are extremely scarce, and MS67 examples are even more difficult to find. Now comes the number that makes this coin especially exciting. The PCGS auction record for the regular 1982 P Washington quarter is $10,200, achieved by an MS68 example at Heritage Auctions on June 9, 2019. That's an extraordinary result for a coin with a face value of just 25 cents. But don't make the mistake of thinking every 1982 P quarter is a $10,000 coin. That record belongs to an exceptionally high-grade specimen. A more typical high-grade example can be worth dramatically less. For example, PCGS records an MS67 example selling for $552 in a David Lawrence auction, while another PCGS MS67 example sold for $225 on eBay in early 2024. The lesson is simple: grade matters enormously. But there is another reason you should inspect the 1982 P quarter closely: mint errors. Some of the most interesting examples were struck on the wrong planchet. A genuine wrong planchet error occurs when a blank intended for another denomination enters the quarter press and receives the Washington quarter design. A 1982 P quarter struck on a 5-cent planchet, for example, will be noticeably smaller and lighter than a normal quarter. A standard quarter should weigh approximately 5.67 grams, while a nickel planchet is around 5 grams. Auction records reported by Graysheet include a 1982 P quarter struck on a 5-cent blank that sold for $234 in 2023. Another fascinating example is a 1982 P quarter struck on a bronze 1-cent blank, with a recorded heritage sale of $1,891 in June 2026. The wrong planchet discoveries are only part of the story. Collectors also watch 1982 P quarters for off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, missing clad layers, filled die characteristics, and possible double die varieties. But this is where careful identification becomes critical. A strange-looking letter or a weak mint mark does not automatically mean a valuable error. Damage after the coin left the mint can create unusual shapes, while die deterioration and mechanical doubling can sometimes look like true doubled dies. If you see apparent doubling in the date, Liberty, In God We Trust, or reverse lettering, examine it under strong magnification and compare it with recognized variety references before assigning a premium value. The weight of the coin can also provide an important clue. If you believe your 1982 P quarter is a wrong planchet error, don't simply rely on appearance. Carefully weigh it with an accurate digital scale and compare the measurement with a normal 1982 P quarter. A significantly different weight combined with an unusual diameter, color, or design appearance can justify further investigation. For example, a quarter struck on a nickel planchet should be smaller and lighter, while a bronze cent planchet example can have a distinctly copper-colored appearance and a much smaller diameter. These dramatic differences are exactly the kind of clues that can turn an ordinary coin search into a serious numismatic discovery. So what is your 1982 P Washington quarter worth? If it is circulated and completely normal, the value is generally around face value. Uncirculated coins can bring premiums, and exceptional mint state examples can reach hundreds or thousands of dollars. PCGS's documented $10,200 auction record shows just how high the market can go for an extraordinary MS-68 specimen. At the same time, Graysheet auction records show a 1982 P MS-66 selling for $74 in May 2026, and an MS-67 plus PCGS example selling for $456 in November 2024. These results show why you should never judge your coin simply by its date. The difference between an ordinary circulated quarter and a top-grade survivor can be enormous. Before you put that 1982 P quarter back into circulation, inspect it one more time. Check the P mint mark, examine the date, study Washington's portrait, inspect the reverse lettering, look for unusual doubling, check the rims and edge, and consider weighing the coin if something appears abnormal. If the coin is exceptionally clean, has an unusual strike, or appears to be on the wrong planchet, professional authentication and grading may be worthwhile. And never clean it. Do not polish it, scrub it, or use chemicals to make it shine. Original surfaces are extremely important in coin collecting, and cleaning can permanently damage the coin's value. The 1982 P Washington quarter may have been made by the hundreds of millions, but the right combination of condition, rarity, and genuine mint error can transform one small quarter into a remarkable collectible. Next up, the 1986 D Washington quarter may look like an ordinary 25-cent coin, but there is a reason collectors continue to examine high-grade examples and unusual errors from this year. The small D mint mark beneath George Washington's neck tells you that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. In 1986, Denver produced approximately 504.3 million Washington quarters, so a normal circulated 1986 D quarter is not considered a major rarity. But here's where the story gets interesting. When a common coin survives in exceptional condition, or when it carries a genuine mint error, its value can change dramatically. PCGS lists the 1986 D as a copper-nickel-clad Washington quarter weighing 5.67 grams, measuring 24.3 millimeters, and featuring a reeded edge. The 1986 D quarter belongs to the modern clad era that began in the mid-1960s. Instead of the 90% silver composition used on Washington quarters dated 1964 and earlier, The 1986D has outer layers composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel surrounding a pure copper center. On the front, you'll see George Washington, Liberty, In God W.E. Trust, and the date 1986. Turn the coin over and you'll find the American eagle surrounded by United States of America, EPLURIBUSUNUM, and quarter dollar. The basic design is familiar, but collectors know that the real story often hides in tiny details: surface quality, strike strength, rim condition, and unusual characteristics that aren't obvious at first glance. Now look directly beneath Washington's neck. That D is the key identifying feature for this issue. It tells you the quarter came from Denver rather than Philadelphia. But don't make the mistake of thinking that simply having a D mint mark makes the 1986 D quarter rare. Millions were produced, and many survive today. In fact, current numismatic references classify the regular issue as widely available in lower grades. What becomes much more interesting is the condition. A circulated coin can have scratches, dull surfaces, flattened details, and contact marks from decades of use. A pristine-looking example with original mint luster and very few marks is a completely different proposition. This is where grading becomes extremely important. Professional grading services use the Sheldon 1:70 scale, with circulated coins occupying the lower grades and mint state coins beginning at MS60. For a 1986 D Washington quarter, collectors pay particular attention to the fields: Washington's cheek and jaw, the lettering, and the reverse eagle. Even tiny marks can prevent an otherwise attractive coin from reaching the highest grades. PCGS records the regular 1986 D issue reaching MS67, while Graysheet auction information also shows MS67 examples bringing substantial premiums compared with ordinary coins. This demonstrates one of the most important lessons in modern coin collecting. The date and mint mark may be common, but exceptional preservation can be scarce. And now comes the number that makes this quarter worth a much closer look. PCGS records an auction record of $900 for a 1986 D Washington quarter graded MS67, sold on February 28, 2010. That's an extraordinary difference from the coin's 25-cent face value. But there is an important detail you should never forget. This does not mean an average 1986 D quarter is worth hundreds of dollars. The $900 result represents an exceptionally high-grade example. Most circulated coins are worth around face value, while lower mint state examples generally bring modest premiums. Graysheet records, for example, show a 1986 D MS66 PCGS example selling for $20 and an MS67 PCGS example selling for $408 in different heritage auction sales. But condition isn't the only thing that can make a 1986 D quarter interesting. Mint errors are another major area to investigate. Imagine finding a 1986 D quarter that was dramatically struck off-center, or one that received an unusual clipped planchet before being struck. These are not normal variations caused by circulation. They can be genuine mint-made errors. Graysheet records a 1986 D quarter struck approximately 60% off-center that graded AU58 ANACS and sold for $480 at heritage auctions in January 2022. Another documented 1986 D quarter with triple curved clips, graded MS61 NGC, sold for $144 in April 2021. These examples show why unusual physical characteristics deserve attention. However, this is also where collectors need to be careful. Not every damaged 1986 D quarter is a valuable error. Coins can become distorted by vending machines, coin-counting equipment, dryers, grinders, and other mechanical processes. A flattened rim, strange edge, or apparent missing portion doesn't automatically prove that the mint created the error. Genuine errors should show characteristics consistent with a minting process, while post-mint damage often leaves abrasion, flattening, or other evidence of later treatment. If a 1986 D quarter looks dramatically different from a normal coin, preserve it rather than attempting to repair it, and consider professional authentication. Another mistake collectors make is assuming every unusual-looking D is a valuable doubled mint mark or repunched mint mark. For this date, online marketplace claims about supposed 1986 D doubled dies and RPM varieties should be treated very cautiously. Current references do not establish a major recognized 1986 D Washington quarter doubled die or repunchment mark variety comparable to famous varieties from other coin series. What looks like doubling may actually be machine doubling, die deterioration, or damage. If you think your coin has a genuine die variety, compare it against authoritative variety references before assigning a premium. So how much is a 1986 D Washington quarter worth? For an ordinary circulated example, the answer is usually simple, approximately face value. CoinWorld's current value table shows circulated 1986 D examples generally carrying only modest premiums, while higher grades can rise considerably. Its listed values extend from around the low or cents above face range for circulated pieces into the tens or hundreds of dollars at much higher grades. Graysheet's auction records similarly demonstrate that an MS-67 example can bring several $100s, while an exceptional error coin can bring hundreds depending on the specific error and grade. If you have one in your collection, start by checking the date and D mint mark. Then examine the overall condition under good lighting. Look at Washington's cheek, the fields, the date, Liberty, and In God We Trust. On the reverse, inspect the eagle and lettering for strong detail and unusual characteristics. Check the rim and edge for genuine clips or striking abnormalities, and if something appears seriously unusual, weigh the coin using an accurate scale. A normal 1986 D quarter should be around 5.67 grams. A major weight difference can be a clue, although weight alone is never enough to prove an error. Most importantly, don't clean the coin. Never polish, scrub, scrape, or chemically treat a potentially valuable 1986 D Washington quarter. Original surfaces are extremely important to collectors, and cleaning can permanently damage the coin and reduce its desirability. The ordinary 1986 D quarter is common, but a superb MS-67 survivor or a dramatic authenticated mint error can be a very different story. That tiny D may identify the Denver Mint, but the real value lies in what else happened to that quarter before it left the mint, and how well it survived nearly 4 decades of American commerce.